one of the questions that I want you all to really come back on was something I mentioned earlier. Where one of our colleagues here has asked a question: who owns the culture of an organisation? Is it the exec or is it the board? Michelle?
I think the key to any relationship, and I talk from a non-exec board perspective, because I think it's different when you've got an exec board. I think the key is the relationship between the CEO and the chair, and that absolutely has to be tight. And from experience, I've had brilliant relationships, and when it works, it really works, and when it doesn't, you've got problems. So I think for me, just because of the person I am, if it's not right, I change it. So you manage upwards, manage downwards, but it's both responsibility. But I firmly, for me, see it sits with the CEO to inform and influence the board and demonstrate why this makes business sense and how this will transform the organisation for the better. But then I also expect, I saw a question coming in about how do you measure it. You know, I go into so many organisations and go, as a board member, you need to be asking me, these are the questions you need to be challenging me, like on that risk and performance registers. You need to be asking me this, you need to be challenging me on this, and you need to do that. And that's our relationship. But yeah, for me, as the CEO, I think it's my responsibility to inform the board. But then in a lot of cases, the board will appoint the CEO. So are you going to appoint like for like, or do you want someone who's going to challenge, or you're not? So there's a lot of different levels of that.
To answer the bigger question, I think the CEO has ultimately got to own it. But at the same time, the board's responsibility is that they have co-worked that and that they are bought into it. And I think one of the really, I'm going to jump into the other question that came up, which is what's a toxic thing in a board. And to me, one of the most toxic things in a board is a culture of soft yeses, where people are, yeah, okay, and let's move on, but they haven't actually bought into it. So for me, there's got to be a bit of healthy tension there, where there's discussion, where there's challenge, where actually you've nutted through it. So yes, the CEO should bring the strategy probably, and this is what we want to be, but the board should absolutely then be helping to refine that and to challenge it, and that's their role. And that way, with some really good, healthy discussion, that I think is the way that you get to something that everybody signs into.
I take Maggie's point, which is very much the chief exec needs to kind of bring it, the board needs to discuss it, appraise it, kind of be what's into it. My concern on that bit is that obviously the chief exec, the officers, they live that every single day. The board come in, and they kind of, they're not necessarily in it every day and they can't see it every day or live it. So I think there is that expectation that the board have been brought on that journey and that the board have done some lived in experiences with it. So they should be responsible for holding the chief executive account. In reality, it should be that chief executive vision. It should be, because they're the link, they're the kind of that time point, unless you've got a very involved board. So in the world where we have, kind of co-opted members into the board, such as John mentioned, they're living the work and making the strategic decisions in that respect.